Welcome to 21st Sports Recap and Reaction for the Carolina Panthers at the New York Giants in their Week 15 matchup played December 20th, 2015. We're going to go over the scores and the stats and give our breakdown and analysis. So you had the undefeated Panthers going to New York to face the G-Men, who are looking to keep pace in the NFC East with just 3 games left, needing a win, as they were tied with the Eagles and the Redskins. But to start things off scoring-wise, in the first quarter, with about 5.5 minutes still left in the quarter, Cam Newton hit Ted Ginn Jr. for a 3-yard touchdown. Graham Gano added the extra point, and it was 7-0 Carolina over New York. Then with a minute and a half left still in the first, Eli Manning hit Ruben Randall for a 27-yard touchdown, and this game was tied at 7 apiece. So that would do it for the scoring in the first quarter. And earlier on in the first quarter, right in the beginning of this game, Odell Beckham Jr. had dropped a touchdown as he was wide open with nothing but space between him and the end zone, and the ball just hit him in the hands, and he didn't come down with it. That would come into factor later on. But here, fast forward to the second quarter, with about 3.5 minutes left before halftime, Rashad Jennings fumbled the ball. Carolina would end up having to review the play to have it overturned. Originally, it was not ruled a fumble, but Tillman ends up recovering the fumble, and so that would end up setting up a 37-yard touchdown pass by Cam Newton to Greg Olsen, and with the extra point by Graham Gano, it would be 14-7 Panthers over the Giants with a little over 2 minutes left before halftime. And then after the Giants went 3 and out, the Panthers got the ball back, and with just seconds left on the clock before halftime, Cam Newton hits Devin Funchess for a 14-yard touchdown. Gano adds the extra point, and it was now 21-7. So the Panthers go up by 2 touchdowns at halftime. Then in the third quarter, Cam Newton threw his 4th touchdown pass of the game, and this was the 3rd straight unanswered touchdown for the Panthers, as Cam Newton went to Philly Brown for a 20-yard touchdown. Graham Gano added the extra point, and it was now 28-7 Panthers over the Giants. Then with about 5.5 minutes still left in the third, Cam Newton hit Ted Ginn Jr. for a 14-yard touchdown. Gano adds the extra point, and it was now 35-7 with about 5.5 left in the third. So it looked like the Panthers were going to run away with this one at this point, up by 28 points. But not so fast. The Giants mounted their comeback, and they started going with a little over a minute still left in the third quarter. Eli Manning went to Willie Ty for an 8-yard touchdown. Josh Brown added the extra point, and it was now 35-14. Let's now go to the fourth quarter. And just a minute and a half into the fourth, Rashad Jennings runs it 38 yards for the touchdown. Brown adds the extra point, and it was now 35-21. So 35-21 with about 13.5 still left to play. The Panthers on the next possession would eat up about 4.5 minutes of clock, but they would end up having their drive stall at the 16. They got down into the red zone, but they would attempt a 34-yard field goal, but it was blocked. So the field goal is blocked, and so now the Giants would take over after the blocked field goal at midfield at the Carolina 46, so already in Panther territory. And the Giants would get down into the red zone, but on 2nd and 2 from the 13, Eli drops back, and he's intercepted by Tillman. Tillman already recovered that fumble earlier, and now with the interception. And so now that was in the end zone, and Carolina would take over on their own 20. It looked like this game was pretty much over with just over 7.5 minutes left to play. But on 2nd and 10, a fumble as Cam Newton was trying to give it to Cameron Artis-Payne, but was kind of read option, and so a little bit of miscommunication between the back and the quarterback, and then ends up in a fumble recovered by Wynn. So the Giants now have new life. They take back over in the red zone at the Carolina 14, and then on 3rd and 4, Eli Manning goes to Shane Vereen for an 8-yard touchdown. Brown adds the extra point, and it was now 35-28 with 5.5 left to play. So a one-score game from what was once a 35-7 lead, now just 35-28. And the Giants would then hold the Panthers to a 3-and-out, and now the Giants would get the ball back after the punt on their own 34 with just over 4 minutes left to play. Then on 3rd and 3 from the 41, Manning goes to Odell Beckham Jr. for a 40-yard reception. Now it's a first down in the red zone at the Carolina 19. They would bring the game down to the 2-minute warning, and then they were faced with a 4th and 5 from the 14. And so now, and this was just after on 3rd down, Manning had been sacked and ended up fumbling the ball, but then they reviewed it and they ruled that it was just an incomplete pass. So now 4th and 5, and they have to go for it with less than 2 minutes left, down by a touchdown. They couldn't give it back to the Panthers, and they needed more than just 3. So on 4th down, they go for it, and Eli Manning hits Odell Beckham Jr. for a 14-yard touchdown. Josh Brown adds the extra point, and this game is tied at 35. And on the play, it's questionable whether Odell Beckham pushed off on Norman. It had been a very physical game between the two, but it was ruled a touchdown, no flag on the play. And so now the Panthers would take over with less than 2 minutes left to play, a tie game from what was once a 4-touchdown lead. They were up by 28 points, and now the Giants had come all the way back to tie this one up. But now the Panthers would start with the ball on their own 26. Then on 2nd and 1, Cam Newton took it himself 2 yards for the first down to bring it up to the 37. And then Cam Newton goes to Greg Olsen. He picks up 16 yards and a first down in Giants territory at midfield at the 47. Cam Newton then went to Ted Ginn Jr. He picks up 12 yards and a first down at the New York 35. Then on 2nd and 10, Newton scrambles for 10 yards, and that brings the ball to the 25. He spikes it to stop the clock with just seconds left. New York tries to ice Graham Gano, who is coming out to attempt a 43-yard field goal. It's up and it's good. Graham Gano with the game-winning field goal as time expires, and the Panthers win 38-35 in a wild fourth quarter. And really a crazy final, like 16-plus minutes of this game. It's the Giants rallied, but the Panthers end up pulling this one off. So Carolina goes into New York and beats the Giants to remain undefeated and to improve their record to 14-0, something only 3 other teams have done. Of course, that being the 72 Dolphins, who would go on for the only perfect season. And coupled with the playoffs, they were the only team to go the whole gauntlet undefeated. And then, of course, in 2007, the Patriots, who would finish the regular season undefeated and lose in the Super Bowl. And then the Colts in 2009 were 14-0. But all 3 of those teams ended up making the Super Bowl. So if history repeats itself, Carolina will be in the Super Bowl. At least that's what history has shown us with the other 3 teams that made it to 14-0. And now you can add the Panthers to that very exclusive company. And they're also 7-0 on the road. The Giants fall to 6-8, 3-4 at home. So they're below 500 at home on the season thus far, with just 2 games left, 1 on the road, 1 at home for both of these teams. But the Giants at 6-8. And with the Redskins winning also at the same time, now the Redskins have a 1-game lead over the Giants in the NFC East. But Carolina, what a victory for the Panthers. They jumped out to that big lead early on, Looked like they were just running away with this game, as Cam Newton was having a monster game. But then the Giants, they never say die. They came all the way back. They tied this one up. But to the Panthers' credit, most teams, if they allowed a team to come all the way back right there, it's tough to be able to regather yourself and be able to go on that game-winning drive at the end. And Cam Newton led them there. And Graham Gano with the field goal to win it. So quite a finish in New York. And the Panthers keep on rolling. And Cam Newton in this game, 5 touchdown passes. He's been on fire. He was 25 for 45, 340 yards, 5 touchdowns through the air. He also had 8 carries for 100 yards in this game. He was just 7 yards shy of being the leading rusher overall in the game, but he was the leading rusher for the Panthers. And Ted Ginn Jr. had 6 receptions for 85 yards and 2 touchdowns. Greg Olsen, 6 receptions for 79 yards and a touchdown. And Philly Brown, 3 receptions for 51 yards and a touchdown. Jericho Cotchery, 4 receptions for 47 yards. And Devin Funchess, 2 receptions for 30 yards and a touchdown. Cameron Artis-Payne had 14 carries for 59 yards rushing, and he also had 2 receptions for 34 yards receiving, which gave him 93 total yards in this game. And then for the Giants, Eli Manning, 29 for 46, 245 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. Rashad Jennings, 16 carries for 107 yards and a touchdown. And then Odell Beckham Jr., 6 catches for 76 yards and a touchdown. Ruben Randall, 4 receptions for 47 yards and a touchdown. Will Tye, 5 receptions for 43 yards and a touchdown. And Shane Vereen, 8 receptions for 43 yards and a touchdown. He also had 4 carries for 29 yards, which gave Vereen 71 total yards on the game. And the kickers in this game, Graham Gano, 1 for 2 on the field goals, of course that one being blocked, and then he was 5 for 5 on the extra points. Josh Brown did not attempt a field goal. He was 5 for 5 on the extra points as well. And on the defense for Carolina, Tillman with that interception there in the fourth quarter. He also had that forced fumble and recovery, and Norman also had a forced fumble as well. And for the Giants, Robert Ayers Jr. had 1.5 sacks, and Thomas had a half sack. JPP also had a sack. And we look at the team stats, 28 first downs for the Panthers, 21 first downs for the Giants. On third down, Carolina was 9 of 17, 52% conversion rate. New York, 6 of 15, 40% conversion rate. They went for it twice on fourth down, converted both. And then total net yards, 480 for Carolina, 406 for the Giants. And on the ground, the Panthers netted 171, the Giants 161. And then through the air, the Panthers netted 309, as Cam Newton was sacked 3 times for a total loss of 31 yards. And for the Giants, they netted 245. Eli was not sacked at all in this game. We look at the penalties in this game. Both teams were penalized 7 times, but 88 penalty yards against the Panthers, 47 penalty yards against the Giants. The Panthers had 1 fumble that they lost. The Giants fumbled twice, and they recovered 1 and lost 1. And then in the red zone, Carolina 3 for 4, 75%. The Giants also 3 for 4, 75%. In time of possession, 30 minutes, 52 seconds for the Panthers, 29 minutes, 8 seconds for the Giants. So the Panthers, they got out to that big lead, and sometimes when you get out to a big lead, you can tend to kind of sit on the lead, and that's kind of what happened, as the Giants were able to claw their way back in. And then the fourth quarter, you had those turnovers back and forth, and then even, with the interception, but then they fumble the ball, and then the Giants come right back, they score, and still the Carolina Panthers stayed poised. They didn't start pointing fingers. They stayed in the game. They kept their heads in the game, and they came back to finish it out strong in the end to get that game-winning field goal. Their only points of the fourth quarter, in a fourth quarter that saw the Giants put up 3 touchdowns. And even in the final 16-plus, they scored 28 points to tie this game up. So it was a wild finish. And Carolina, again, shows that even in games where other teams would have let teams come back on them and let the victory slip away, Carolina just refuses to lose. They play the full 60 minutes. They finish strong in every single game this year. Like I said, even in games where it comes down to the wire, they're right there to the end, and they come away with the victory. So a big win for Carolina. Still undefeated, now 18 games in a row going back to last season, as Cam Newton is making further, statements towards being the MVPs. He's really shown and proven 5 touchdowns and 100 yards rushing. So 5 through the air, then getting it done both ways. It's Cam Newton just having an unbelievable season. And the Panthers are playing at a very high level. New York also, to their credit, this is what makes New York such a scary team if they can manage to pull off the East. Of course, they didn't help themselves today. They now fall a game back of Washington with just 2 left to play. But the Giants are actually probably the scariest team in the NFC in terms of once it comes to the playoffs. They're a team that could literally beat anybody. As they showed today, even though they were getting dominated early on, they managed to somehow come back and make this come down to the very final play of the game when the Panthers won with the field goal. But to the Giants' credit, if they can make it into the playoffs, they're probably one of the bigger threats to the Panthers getting to the Super Bowl, which almost seems like a sure thing. Of course, I'm sure that the Arizona Cardinals and the Seahawks, and not to mention the Packers and the Vikings also have something to say about that. And even but actually with the Giants losing, both the Packers and the Vikings are now in the playoffs with this Giants loss. So the Panthers helping out the Packers and the Vikings. But let me know what you think in the comments section below. Definitely interested to read your thoughts and opinions. Thank you very much for listening. It's greatly appreciated. I hope you're having a good day and having a great weekend and enjoying all the sports.